Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode 918 for the 10th of May, 2026. I'm gladly not Richard Saunders. It's Maynard here, filling in for Richard, who has got a case of the skeptical flu. Oh, poor Richard. Come on, everybody. Oh, poor Richard. I think he's actually been looking at too many UFOs lately. That's enough to make anyone queasy. In fact, I believe he was seen recently in suburban Melbourne releasing weather balloons for no apparent reason in different directions. But just the other day, the US government released thousands of more UFO files, Not that they were really all that interesting. Some of them have been seen before, a lot of fuzzy out of focus photos with no context, and old correspondence from decades ago. In fact, I think there was a letter from the Captain and Tennille in there, I think, because they saw a lot of stuff during their time. You wouldn't believe it, people. Anyway, coming up on this week's show, I head to Skeptics in the Pub, where I interview Dr Sue Ieraci and Kate Thomas about the placebo effect, and neither of them believed I was real. Following that, we go to Canada, where Cat McLeod, she makes that noise, reports from the We Can Reason conference. She interviews Seth Andrews and Dr Chris Labos. And there's even some singing. Unfortunately, no Captain and Tennille numbers, but we can only hope for next time. Then we have Adrienne Hill with the Australian Skeptics newsletter. That's right. I wish they had letters to the editor a bit more often. Dear Skeptics, you've got it wrong. I have a chicken that can explore space and all known physics. That's the letter I want to read. But yet it's been suppressed by the Australian Skeptics newsletter. Anyway, but it's Adrienne Hill reading the newsletter, written by news editor D. Finally, to round off the show, Richard does make an appearance to read the Trove segment. That's right, he's been digging in the dusty libraries of the Library of New South Wales and finding all sorts of things. In his Trove segment this week, this time it's about a very famous Australian mentalist couple, not to be confused with the marmalade-eating bear. That's right, a mentalist couple from the 40s and the 50s. I think the Captain and Tennille were known as mentalists in their time as well. And, of course, there's the famous Australian mental band, Mental as Anything. They could just read your mind like you wouldn't believe. Now it's time for me to run to the kitchen and have a nice crumpet, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's time for me to run to the kitchen and have a bit of Captain and Tennille. And while I do that, hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone, because love will keep us together.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Hello, Sue. How are you here tonight at this huge night at Skeptics in the Pub?
I'm really well, thanks, Maynard. Good to see you.
Well, good to see you too. I've come along here because I want to hear about your talk about the placebo effect. It's my belief that the placebo effect is just the noise floor of any given experiment. Is that correct?
That's one way of interpreting it, but what I'm going to talk about tonight is the essence of it and how it's come to be understood.
And you think most people are a little bit mistaken in the way it's look like they think, if I think it'll work and it works, I might as well do it. In the same way that most wellness industry is based on big placebo. That's what we like to call them, big placebo.
Yes, I think you've got it spot on, Maynard, that the placebo effect is definitely exploited by that huge wellness industry.
And has it ever actually worked for you?
Probably has, without me even having analysed it. Probably when my mum put a Band-Aid on my scratch knee, that was probably placebo effect.
Now, what if you are wearing something that makes you feel confident and you think you look great, so you become a more confident person for that evening or for that time? Is that also a placebo effect of some sort?
If you want to broaden the definition, then anything that makes you feel good would be a placebo effect because it's pleasing you.
What made you want to talk about this in particular?
Probably because, especially since COVID, when there's been so much misinformation about the way vaccines are tested, people in the past never thought twice about how any medication was tested because the general population wasn't really exposed to it. But during COVID, when we heard every step along the way of every vaccine trial, every man and his dog became a commentator on the scientific method. So that's something that I wanted to help people understand a bit better.
Well, I was listening to a podcast today and they were making an argument that the mRNA vaccine isn't actually a vaccine because it doesn't work in the way that regular vaccines work. Like it doesn't give you a bit of the
organism.
Yes. So is the strict definition of a vaccine that or not?
No. In fact, there's never been a strict definition of a vaccine. The same as there aren't strict definitions of most things in life, that there are different ones in different languages and for different purposes.
Do you think it's happened to you with the Band-Aids there? Have you seen it in situ as a doctor where people... They really have. As a GP, they come to your surgery and they're expecting to get tablets of some sort, even if they've got something that doesn't react to antibiotics anyway. They aren't happy unless they go away with antibiotics, and that's not really useful for what they've got. Is that an example of people wanting a placebo effect?
That's definitely true. And because my specialty is emergency medicine, those patients are even more prone to wanting a quick solution. And I'd have to say, as I'll explain in the talk, that being a good clinician has its own placebo effect in that being shown to be caring actually helps people to feel better even independently of any medication that's given.
Like with an emergency situation, I would have thought that's the least placebo type situation because you've got to get something done now and in a hurry, and that doesn't necessarily need a placebo. You just need to have something that's effective.
That's right, that's true.
I'm bleeding. Oh, hang on, this will help.
That's right. That's definitely true at the sharpest end, but of course the population in emergency departments goes from people having cardiac arrest to people that's presenting with pain or different symptoms. So that's also one of the interesting things to talk about, that placebos don't work acutely and in severe illness, and people who are promoting whole systems of care like homeopathy don't have an explanation of why their modality only works for people who aren't very sick. And if it really reflected science, why wouldn't it work for people who are bleeding to death as well?
Kind of same with acupuncture. That's not, the mechanism isn't very well explained with that either.
That's true. In fact, as people try to explain it and investigate that sort of mechanism that's proposed, it's actually been disproven that those mechanisms occur.
Where can people find out more about what you're talking about here, or more about what you're doing online at the moment?
There are lots of... I'll leave a lot of references in my talk, but I'm often seen on social media just posting in my own name. So if people want to follow me arguing with anti-scientists...
Had any good fights lately online? Come on, you must have had some.
Oh, they happen constantly.
Come on, just tell us about a recent one, just to finish up with. So there you are, dum-de-dum-de-dum, internet. Oh, there's a right idiot. And you get in an argument about what and what has happened.
Okay, well, one of the classics at the moment, there's a lot of arguing on social media about people denying vitamin K for newborns, because newborn babies are born with relatively low vitamin K levels, and they often have life-threatening hemorrhages into the brain. Not often, it's rare, but it's preventable with vitamin K.
And is there a downside to having vitamin K when they're young, when you can't make it? Can you have too much?
No, you can't have too much, but the thing that makes me think about this argument is that people say we're perfectly designed by God to, therefore the way we're made must be the right way.
If anyone's had a look at anyone's reproductive system, they'll see that's wrong.
That's exactly the case, and whether there's a creator or not, I won't even enter into, but evolution hasn't led to perfection, it's only led to survival of the species.
No, and so they think you shouldn't give it to the baby for that reason. No, that seems a bit silly.
It is silly, and then they also go on to say, ask the classic question is, how did humanity survive up till now? And of course the answer is by having many, many, many children so that at least two of them outlive the parents.
That's right. And we got down to a bottleneck of about 2,000 people during the Ice Age there, I think, for a while, so things were a bit rough.
That's right. We almost didn't survive then. And In fact, if you look at longevity of the human race up till now, you'll see that the way we lived in our natural state wasn't better than we do now.
And did you see Richard Saunders the other night on Australia Story when he was like poo-pooing the people that saw the UFO at Westall?
Yes, I saw that, and it was interesting having been at a talk at a previous Skeptics in the pub that looked at things like testimonies of witnesses, how unreliable memory is, let alone being unreliable 40 or 50 years after the event.
Oh, look, reliably, your food has arrived here too, so do enjoy your meal this evening. I look forward... Is that yours?
What did you order?
I can't remember.
He said number 8.
Okay, if that's number 8, I'll go for it.
Okay, well, we now pass to the sound of Sue having munch.
What did you think? Can I bring my wine?
Oh, look, of course you can bring your wine. Now, who have we got here hiding at the back of the room?
It's only me. It's only Kate.
And how has the On the Moans podcast been going?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Maynard, because I am just little old me in Sydney, and my podcast is being listened to in 30 countries around the world, which makes me just think that biologically we are not that different, are we?
How's Romania going? Romania, they're big in Romania on hormones. They love them.
They're jacked up on hormones in Romania. People are listening from Pakistan and Nigeria, and I just think it's incredible that women across the world are experiencing the same thing, and we're just not that different.
Look, and certainly I was listening to you talking to Richie the other day, and you were talking about how you got injections in the forehead, was it? Yes?
I did. I got my first round of botox in my forehead, and I am obsessed. I love it so much, and I love to frown at my children and say I'm really cross with you, and they say to me, well, I can't tell because you can't move your eyebrows. I can though, can't I? Look, I'm moving my eyebrows.
I can see your eyebrows moving there.
Thank you.
And you haven't got well, there's a very famous Australian star. You can always tell when she overdoes it because she has the devil's droop going on, as you know. You know the Australian star I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And
she goes out in public, it's almost a solid V just above her nose.
It's such a good look. It's a really natural...
It's a giveaway.
It's a giveaway. It is a giveaway. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I'm into it. I'll be into all the injectables soon. You watch. Next time I see you, I'll be on the peptides.
Now, what is it about the peptides? I've heard recently that it's causing hair loss in some women.
Oh,
I don't know if it's technically alopecia or whether it's hair loss. I'm not quite sure. But or whether that was just someone was on it and they were going to have hair loss anyway. But I've just heard that a few reports of that from the US.
I don't know. I think that they are so untested that you are really rolling the dice on any kind of anything that it does to you because they're so untested. Stick to the Ozempic. That's a peptide.
Well, think the tried and true methods, because you spoke about you don't like dyeing your hair anymore. You don't want to dye your hair anymore. And you went out with your girlfriends, and a lot of them are still dyeing their hair. But yet the vanity of getting the forehead done, how do you square that one?
Look, that irony was not lost on me, as I think I mentioned. No, I don't need to square that. I feel like I'm adult enough just to be able to go, I'm not dyeing my hair, but I am going to get Botox in my forehead. I'm pointing now, which is really good on a podcast, isn't it? I'm pointing to the area between my eyebrows.
Which is not devil's drooping.
Which is not devil's drooping, no, because I had it done tastefully.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the furrowing I was getting there. So that was all. Oh, no, it's purely vanity. Stupid.
No, fair enough. And we're talking about the placebo here tonight. Now, I've been doing a hypothesis or whatever it is that placebo is just the noise floor of any given experiment. Is that would be correct to say that with the double blinding and all that sort of thing?
I'm super looking forward to what Sue's going to say because she's so interesting. But placebo effect absolutely is a real thing. So people can definitely take the placebo and feel better.
Have you seen that ever happen in practice as a pharmacist?
Well, I was going to say, as all those people who think they're taking magnesium and they're sleeping better.
Uptake inhibitors, maybe there's a bit of that going on too?
Yeah, I think so, and just the amazing power of what your mind can convince you of. So no, it'll be really good because Sue's always really interesting.
Just one last question. I rose this with Sue. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were being very harsh on vaccines and they were saying that the complete the digits. I'm forgetting the mRNA vaccine.
Yep.
Is not a vaccine because it doesn't operate the same way as a traditional vaccine, like originally like smallpox did. Here's a bit of smallpox. That stops you getting a big lot of smallpox, and that's not the way that... So is it still a vaccine technically?
It is still technically a vaccine, and they've actually... I was listening to a lady talking about a new vaccine that they're making for... was it pancreas cancer? I don't know. It was so interesting. And it was also not a traditional vaccine.
Yeah, because there's nothing that causes that cancer that's a vector,
That's right, but it stimulates an immune response. So no, vaccines are amazing. Amazing.
And continue on with the show. Got to go. Bye.
For crying out loud. It's Cat McLeod. This is Cat McLeod coming to you from the Week in Reason conference. We're currently in a breakout room doing a sing-along. Everybody's playing some instruments and singing some great songs. We've already had a very interesting talk this morning on morals, and last night we had a talk on creativity. I've said too much and said enough. I'm here with the fabulous Seth Andrews. Seth, how are you enjoying the conference so far?
Oh, these people are family. You know, I get to come up and just hang out for a weekend with, there's a stereotype about how nice Canadians are, but it happens to be true. They're not judging me because I came from, the other border. I crawled over the border in the prone position, and honestly, it's been great. They've got a great potpourri of speakers. I'm up in a few, so I'm trying to get myself psyched up and ready to rock and roll, but I'm good.
Have you taken anything away from any of the other speakers today? Like any little nuggets of information you'd like to share with the Skeptic Zone listeners?
Well, I'm a big Phil Zuckerman fan, and he's an amazing sociologist. Dr. Zuckerman's done a lot of work on secular studies and the myth that religious people are happier or more moral or all those types of things. And his research for me, I was sitting there with my mouth open. Plus, he's just such a great communicator. He's got a great sense of humor. So, he kicked off the day, and it just continued from there. I'm preparing a presentation about the Western notions of what Jesus Christ may have looked like, and he's strangely pale with blue eyes. Where did that come from?
Clearly a relative of mine.
It's true. It's true. Very white Jesus. So, in fact, that's the sort of the pseudo title of my speech is White Jesus. And so I'm getting ready to do that in about a half an hour. Looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Do you have any message for Richard?
Let's see. I would like him to make me an origami. I'm trying to think of an animal that would challenge him. The problem is he's so gifted.
He is.
So, I want to say, hey, make me a duck-billed platypus, but he probably wouldn't even blink. He would just make one. He's that good. So my message for him mostly would be, hey, brother, hope to see you on the road. That'll be it.
Or maybe make a white Jesus.
Or, I guess, a piece of notebook paper and draw a beard on it and call it good. You're all set, yeah.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, Seth.
You got it.
I'm here with Dee, who's also from Edmonton. Dee, what brought you to the Week in Reason conference?
Just the chance to be together with other free thinkers and to find more stories of people like myself. Whether it's growing up with no religion, growing up with religion, and finding ways to escape it. And most importantly, it's the humanist in me and the humanist aspects of life.
Is this your first conference?
It is. It is my first conference.
So not just your first Week in Reason conference, but your first conference.
It is. It is.
I'm ecstatic for you.
Thank you. I'm having a great time and getting the chance to meet people. It's been fabulous.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say to Skeptic Zone listeners about maybe why they should attend a meeting like this or a conference?
I think one of the things is talking to other people that are here, realizing how much I don't know about humanism, about atheism. You have your own little pockets of information that really you got to find by yourself because there aren't groups. So this grouping is absolutely an important place to be for me, and I think other people would benefit from it greatly.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much. You as well.
I will. Cheers. That was wonderful. It's Kat McLeod. I'm here at the Week in Reason conference on day 2. I am here with Zen. How are you enjoying the conference so far?
I am loving it. I feel accepted, and it's one of those things that's hard to find a space where you walk in and everyone's like, you're supposed to be here. This is all well and good, and that is what I am loving. So I am enjoying myself.
And I love that I'm seeing you again because we met for the first time last year.
Yes, it was so good to see people, and then I came in and people were like, I know who you are, oh my gosh, hi. And I was like, oh my gosh, that feels so nice. So it's been wonderful.
It's like a little family reunion, isn't it? Is there
a good family reunion, yes.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the Skeptic Zone listeners about why they should attend events like this?
There are not enough of us speaking out. And it can become very, very lonely and isolating when we feel like it's just us watching the world change without us. How are we going to change it if we don't communicate with each other? They're organizing, we need to as well.
Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very, very much.
We'll see you next year.
See you next year.
I'm here with the fabulous Dr. Christopher Labos, and I know that Adrienne Hill already stole you for an interview, but that was before the conference officially kicked off, and now we're on the final day of the conference. So I'd like to get your closing thoughts about how things went.
I think things went very well. I mean, different perspective now on ground level as opposed to on a gondola, which is where I did the interview with Adrienne. I thought it was a fun conference. It was fun. I think people seem to like the talk I gave, which is always a good sign. You never want them to hate the talk or throw things at you. So
it was excellent.
I think it was well received, and that's really what you care about. So I had a good time. We had a great night. We had a great trip to Banff, and I think just positive things to say all around.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I always love seeing you. I always love your talks. Keep doing what you're doing. Do you have any final messages for the Skeptic Zone listeners?
Don't get sick. That's my general advice to most people because, it's not fun being sick. So there you go. Just don't get sick. That's the best health advice I can give anyone.
And for those of us with chronic illnesses, what?
Go back in time and prevent whatever it was that made you sick because at this point, it's pretty much every man, woman, and child for themselves at this point. Yeah.
Don't take supplements. Note to self.
No, unfortunately, they don't do much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Labos. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
Well, the conference is now over, and I have to say, I think it was a great success. There was lots of networking, lots of really great speakers, and from what I saw, a good time was had by all. So, signing off from the We Can Reason conference in Calgary, Canada, this is Kat McLeod.
Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Hill here in Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada, and I'm going to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. This is newsletter number 246. Now don't forget, you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au to get the full report, complete with all the links every other week right into your inbox. But let's see what our news editor, Dee, has for us this time. Hi all, says Dee. For our upcoming collaborative convention, Nauticon, Australian Skeptics is proud to be presenting multiple scholarships for students to attend. We encourage you to forward details to applicable students. For more information and to apply, visit skeptics.com.au. In the news this fortnight, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has had a new director nominated who directly clashes with the previous stance of U.S. administration when it comes to the recommendation and procedure regarding immunization, perhaps indicating the country has begun turning the corner on its rhetoric. While UFOs, or UAPs infuriatingly, continue to take up much of the skeptical discourse on the internet, Skeptoid has recently launched its crowdfunding campaign to publish a documentary detailing the timeline and rationale behind the recent UFO hysteria. We at the Australian Skeptics have teamed up with the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe to bring you Nauticon Skepticon, Life, the Universe and Everything, our 42nd annual conference. Tickets are on sale. Continue on for more information. In the meantime, read on. D. Okay, D, I'll do just that. Nauticon plus Skepticon scholarships. Calling all secondary and tertiary students. The Australian Skeptics and the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe bring you Nauticon plus Skepticon 2026 in Sydney from July 23rd through 25th. We would love to see as many students there as possible. And to that end, we are delighted to offer a range of scholarships for students who are able to attend. The scholarships available are 5 full scholarships at $350 and 20 partial scholarships at $200. For more information and to apply, visit www.skeptics.com.au. Scholarships are provided by the Trainer Foundation to promote the development of critical thinking skills in young people. Nominations for the 2026 Bent Spoon Award are still open. Now, if you have a burning nomination for the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle, you can forward them to our nomination page. This year, there seems to be an interesting lineup of psychics and other amazing claims. I wonder if Psychic Penny's in there. Nominations should be for events, activities, or claims that have occurred in Australia or by Australians. And the winner will be announced at Nauticon Skepticon in July. Crowdfunded skeptical scientific documentary called Alien Echoes. Skeptoid is currently crowdfunding a documentary which seeks to highlight the scientific literacy crisis we are facing regarding extraterrestrial life. It's exposing the exploitation of public interest in alien life by influencers and filmmakers who are releasing a rash of pseudoscientific, pseudo-documentaries, and other films that stoke up fear and misinformation on this topic. Anatomy of a scam. If it's too good to be true, your first instinct is probably right. A 2025 study of the Global Anti-Scam Alliance found that 7 in 10 adults worldwide have encountered a scam in the last year, with 13% facing these threats at least once a day. Newest US CDC nomination is at odds with the Health Secretary. President Donald Trump has nominated Dr. Erica Schwartz, a vaccine supporter and former Deputy Surgeon General, to lead the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which represented a clear signal the White House is distancing itself from Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s anti-vaccine agenda. Also, the CDC won't publish a report linking the COVID vaccine to a reduced risk of hospitalization. The report contained information indicating that the COVID-19 vaccine cut hospital visits nearly in half for vaccinated adults in the winter of 2026. Meanwhile, the Children's Health Defense sues American Academy of Pediatrics. The anti-vaccine organization Children's Health Defense has sued the American Academy of Pediatrics, claiming that the AAP's decades-long effort to encourage immunizing children is a racketeering enterprise. Nauticon tickets available. For this year's conference, we are partnering with the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe to bring you Nauticon, Skepticon, Life, the Universe, and Everything. And it will be held at the Sydney Masonic Centre for 3 days of skeptical excellence, from Thursday, July 23rd to Saturday, July 25th. Skeptics in action. If you have any ideas for stories or want to contribute to Skeptics communication, such as our Facebook page or other social media, or just have something you want to get off your chest, then you're welcome to get in touch. News leads should be sent to newstips@skeptics.com.au. Comments and suggestions should go to editor@skeptics.com.au. Items of interest. Why are we still talking about aliens? Quote, I went to the US to chase aliens, end quote. A Guardian reporter is intrigued by the recent bevy of UFO claims. They dig deeper and don't find a lot. This is a long article looking at claims versus evidence. High-quality data is worth 1,000 LLMs in resolving ambiguities about UFOs. This one is for the tech buffs, but seriously, who doesn't like articles composed primarily of acronyms, such as AI, ML, LLM, NLP, GLT, VAR, UFOs, and of course, UAPs. Silly story of the week. The Sun plays up apocryphal UK's most violent poltergeist. The Sun newspaper in the UK attempts to push ghost stories that would be better at home in a B-class movie or a particularly trifling episode of Ghost Hunters. Children being choked and branded, possessions and poltergeists, not to mention mad monks flying eggs, blood-curdling screams, and pushchairs being launched downstairs. I mean, really, it's all here. Story of the week. I speak to the dead, and they all share the same regrets. A psychic claims that apparently the dead are not particularly happy with how their life worked out. Trust me, you don't need to consult the dead to get a consensus. Well, that's all for now. But before I leave, I wanted to encourage all who can attend Nauticon to do so. I really had so much fun at Week in Reason meeting so many wonderful people, where I actually had to explain a couple times how my studio became known as Skookum Studios. Now, some of you might remember that it happened after the very first Week in Reason in 2023, when Richard, Greg, and I were hiking in Banff. My husband made a comment about how skookum the railing was beside the trail. Richard did a double take and asked, "What is skookum?" And it is a word used mostly in British Columbia to mean something that is strong and sturdy. And Richard continued to giggle about the name for the rest of the hike. It seems I'm not the only zone giggler. Richard thought it was so fun that Skookum Studios was born. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill from my spirited, sparkling, story-filled Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada.
Now it's time once again to go back to the archives at Trove and other associated references and searches and whatnot to find newspaper items and articles of interest to skeptics. And this week I'm going to be looking at the Piddingtons. And in the almost 20 years of the Skeptic Zone, And I searched and I searched. I'm very surprised I haven't mentioned the Piddingtons before. Maybe I have in passing, but I certainly haven't done a trove on them. Who were the Piddingtons? The Piddingtons were a mentalist duo from Sydney who travelled to the UK in the 1950s and made it big, very big. They had an audience in the millions for their mentalism act. Now, there are many mentalists, which is all very fine, and mentalism is of interest to skeptics. It's an interesting way to look at illusion and how some people can be fooled, of course. But it's of interest to me personally because of an incident that I've probably related on the Skeptic Zone before, where I was backstage with one Simon Turnbull. The late Simon Turnbull, he died in 2014, and he was the president of the Australian Psychics Association and the editor of the International Psychics Directory, I think. Anyway, we were on a chat show where I bent a spoon, surprisingly enough. This was a pilot for a chat show which, as far as I know, never went anywhere, but there you go. Anyway, after the show where I taught him how to bend a spoon, he mentioned to me that he was writing an article about the Piddingtons because he thought they were an example of a real psychic couple. It was real telepathy. And I had to do a double take. And I said to him, you know, Simon, it's an act. It's mentalism. It was a wonderful stage and radio act. They practiced it. It's not dissimilar to what you might find even today. And Simon Turnbull, being Simon Turnbull, did not accept that. In his opinion, they were real. Then again, he thought Uri Geller was real. Let's have an overview of the Piddingtons. Sydney Piddington, born 1918 and died in 1991, and Leslie Piddington, born 1925, dying 2016, only 10 years ago, were an Australian husband and wife mentalism team who performed as the Piddingtons, giving one of the most famous stage and radio telepathy acts of modern times. Now, the roots of this whole act come from World War II, where Sydney Piddington was a prisoner in the notorious Changi prison. To keep up morale, he devised a mentalism act to entertain his fellow soldiers. And you can only pay tribute to those people under appalling conditions doing something to keep their minds ticking over and to keep up morale. After being released from the Changi prisoner of war camp, he met Leslie Pope, who was an actress, at a homecoming party. Together they worked on Sydney's tricks to dazzle post-war audiences with theatrical displays of telepathy, hypnosis, and other psychic feats. The format was consistent and audacious. Mr. Piddington was on stage with an audience. He got some random bit of information from the audience. For example, an audience member picked a passage from a book. Then Mrs. Piddington, who was somewhere else, far away, appeared to read her husband's thoughts and reveal the message. Their fame grew, and the locations Mrs. Piddington would end up in would become more spectacular. Among the more famous demonstrations was the time that Leslie Piddington was in a diving bell, submerged under the water. After becoming famous for this routine in Australia in the late 40s, they set out on a trip to England, hoping to get a theatre tour. The couple found it tough going and were almost on the verge of returning home when the breakthrough came with the BBC. Their act subsequently went on to attract audiences of around 20 million listeners. And here, from the 1950s, is a part of their routine from London, where Sydney Piddington was in the theatre and Leslie Piddington was high above in the skies.
Off on a mystery trip from Filton Airfield, Bristol, went a Stratocruiser. Its passenger of honour, Leslie Piddington, the female half of the husband and wife team, who for more than a year have baffled 20 million radio listeners. With the crew went our cameraman, probing the secret behind the Piddington story. This was to be their most exacting test yet. The object? To transmit a train of thoughts to Mrs. Piddington, 20,000 feet up, from a studio in Piccadilly, where before judges Hugh Williams and Gladys Young, Sydney Piddington opened the proceedings.
Are you ready for us over in the Strata Cruiser, Gilbert Harding?
Yes, we are here, still gaining height. I'm moving even further away from Leslie Piddington. And here is Jean Gordon, a stewardess. What did you do to Mrs. Piddington a few minutes ago?
I searched her very thoroughly in spite of the cold. I made her take off everything. I looked in the padding of her jackets. I looked in her boots. I even looked in her mouth and her hair. And now I have her handbag, so I think you can be sure she's nothing hidden away anywhere on her person.
Well, here we are still rocking about, and back to you, Sydney, in Piccadilly.
Just before we crossed over to the Strata Cruiser, I asked all of you in the studio here to write something down or to draw a picture or provide something to be used later in this program. I also asked you to insert those, whatever they may be, in numbered envelopes which were issued to you as you arrived in the studio this evening. And the enclosed contents will form the subject to be transmitted to Leslie. Is that all clear?
The subject to be transmitted was chosen at random, and Piddington first heard of it from one of the judges. Can he transmit it to his wife?
Will you get Leslie to stand by right now?
Will you stand by, please? She is now standing by.
A bird. One bird. Someone talking. Someone saying hello. Spirit. I can't make sense out of it. Oh, it's two lines. Bird, spirit. Hello. Oh, I've got it. I can guess it. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert. I think that's very nice. In fact, whoever thought of it? Hail to thee.
Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert.
Thank you.
The Piddingtons act was startling to many people. No wonder they attracted so many listeners. And reports are that many scientists were convinced their powers were real. They performed in theatres across Britain, including the London Palladium. The method behind their act was a closely guarded secret, unknown even to the producers of the BBC. Now, in later life, Sydney and Leslie Piddington were divorced, and Sydney Piddington continued the act with his new wife. And one of the catch cries from the radio show was, "You be the judge." But now let's look into the archives and see what we can find about the amazing act that was the Piddingtons. And we start with Woman's Day magazine, dated the 25th of March 1974. So a good many years after the heyday of the Piddingtons. But still, in 1974 they would be very fresh in the memory of many people. This is barely 20 years after their heyday. How you can develop your ESP, by Sydney Piddington. Many people possess ESP, says Sydney Piddington, who tells how he developed his own in Changi Jail. And this reminds us, of course, that in the 1970s the term ESP was very popular. You really don't hear that anymore. Do you have extrasensory perception? That is the question. And if you discovered you possess it, how can you develop your ability to its full potential? Who better to answer these questions than Australia's best-known authority on ESP, Sydney Piddington. And there's a photograph of Sydney Piddington taken roughly at that stage, I imagine. And it says, Sydney Piddington today. Quote, "Women are often more sensitive to ESP than men," end quote. And another picture on the page, is Sydney Piddington and Leslie in their heyday, which says Sydney and Leslie Piddington in the days of their famous mind-reading act, which was founded on Sid's ESP experiments in Changi prison camp. As originator of the world-famous telepathic team, the Piddingtons, Sid and former wife Leslie took his amazing mind-reading act straight from Australian radio to worldwide controversy via a BBC radio series with an audience of more than 20 million listeners, and a headline act which broke records at the London Palladium. Here, in a fascinating two-part series, Sydney Piddington introduces you to the world of ESP by showing you, step by step, how he developed and channeled his ESP ability into telepathic communication. Now, the article is lengthy, I won't go through it all, but we will look at some of the highlights. On the next page, there's a sidebar that says, "There's no question now, ESP does exist," say scientists. Only a decade or two ago, the question, "Does extrasensory perception exist?" still raged in scientific circles. Now that its existence is established, the next questions are, quote, "Where does it come from?" End quote. And, quote, "How can it be developed?" End quote. Oh dear, I think that's rather begging the question. One of the logical fallacies you can find out about when you listen to Michelle Biggersma's wonderful series of logical fallacies, link at skepticzone.tv. And it's surprising how often skeptics come across examples of people begging the question. Hardly a country in the civilized world. When was this printed? 1974. Okay. Civilized world does not have at least one university department engaged in research into the mysterious fields of parapsychology, which embrace ESP, telepathy, foreknowledge, and clairvoyance. Researchers into the extrasensory perception field include Nobel Prize winners in physics and medicine, and professors of philosophy. Just a few illustrations of the remarkable rise in scientific status of ESP in recent years include massive-scale Russian scientific tests in telepathic communication between thousands of subjects and between distant cities such as Moscow and Leningrad. That would save a few rubles on long-distance calls, I imagine. In 1969, the American Association for the Advancement of Science officially acknowledged an affiliation with the Parapsychology Association. Proof positive. February 1971, astronaut Scott Mitchell, and I think they mean Edgar Mitchell, during his Apollo 14 mission to the Moon, underwent telepathic tests in space with 4 subjects on Earth. The tests were based on classic ESP card tests begun by Dr. J.B. Rhine in the 1930s. Mitchell is quoted as saying the tests, quote, "far exceeded anything expected," end quote. I think James Randi looked into those and discovered that they were less than spectacular. 1974, ESP testing machines are now being manufactured on poker machine principles with 5 cards. I wish I had one. The subject presses buttons which light up when his ESP hit is correct. The machine keeps score of the number of correct hits made out of the total number of cards played. I see. Anyway, let's read on with a bit more of what Sydney Piddington had to say in 1974. And the heading of the page is "A Famous Australian Tells His Secrets, the ESP Tests We Practiced in Changi." I feel we should establish right at the beginning what ESP is not. It is a sense or ability quite different from what might be possessed or claimed by the hypnotist, the exorcist, the spiritualist, the medium, the clairvoyant. I think the best definition of ESP is that it is a heightened mental awareness. Although a clairvoyant or a spiritualist might have the same awareness in addition to other powers. This doesn't mean that because you also have ESP, you can predict the winner of a race or see ghosts. I wish you could. That would be handy, especially the race. I believe that many people possess various degrees of ESP. Whether we recognize it or not, ESP comes into everybody's life. Now, for the sake of brevity, I don't think we'll read too much more of this particular article. It's very interesting. Here's a paragraph about others can pick up a phone and say, without thinking, "Hello, John," when they weren't expecting John and hadn't talked to him for weeks. They just happened to sense who is on the other end of the line. And that's the classic, you're thinking about somebody, then the phone rings, which doesn't happen so much anymore because you're always in contact with everybody else all the time. But in the old days, occasionally you would be thinking about somebody, and within minutes or within the hour or something like that, the phone would ring, you'd pick it up, and that would be the person you're thinking of. And that's confirmation bias. And also, I think in the documentary Here Be Dragons, it's explained as the law of very large numbers. Some things are bound to happen. Other little tidbits from this article say women, in fact, are often more sensitive to ESP than men. And generally speaking, they're rather more receptive when someone's transmitting ordinary, everyday ESP signals. And here's a random mention of the Piddingtons from 1949, the 9th of July. From the Daily Telegraph in Sydney. BBC tests telepathy. London, Friday. The BBC will give the Piddingtons, Australian mental telepathy team, their toughest test next week. The Piddingtons scored a great success in their first BBC show last night. In the next show, Mrs. Piddington will hover in a helicopter above the studio from which her husband will broadcast and pick up telepathic messages from him. In last night's performance, heard by 10 million people, Mr. Sydney Piddington sent thought transfers to his wife Leslie, by which she was able to call correctly colours and cards selected by umpires. The BBC took special precautions to keep a friend of the Piddingtons, Mr. Russell Braddon, Sydney law student, away from the studio because a newspaper had suggested sceptically that Mr. Braddon might be the, quote, missing link, end quote, in the act. And finally, from the Canberra Times, dated the 15th of August 1949, Piddingtons challenged by columnist. London, Sunday. The Thought Transference Act by the Australian Sydney Piddington and his wife Leslie is based on an elaborate and complicated system of carefully memorized codes in which speech and other sounds, gestures and various movements are employed according to circumstances. This is the opinion of columnist Arthur Helliwell of the newspaper The People, who declares he has got the hang of the act. Helliwell says that if Piddington will allow him to choose any object not from a list prepared by Piddington and succeeded in communicating it to his wife in another room, then he would admit he was wrong. The Piddingtons have been top entertainment in Britain for the past month. Well, there we go. And there's actually a lot about the Piddingtons online. If you care to have a look, if you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au and type in the Piddingtons, you can find more. And indeed, that clip I played earlier, that's simply available on YouTube. And it's a wonderful piece of mentalism history. But maybe ultimately the important lesson for us today is that if you don't know how something is done, you don't therefore conclude it must be paranormal. It's like looking at unidentified flying objects in the sky. If you don't know what it is, you should not therefore conclude it's an alien spaceship. Well, there we are. A look at the Piddingtons, Sydney and Leslie Piddington, a wonderful Australian entertainment duo from the 1940s and the 1950s. And you too can find out so much more about mentalism and the Piddingtons, as I said before, when you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, type in your search because, well, as I discovered and as I keep discovering, you never know what you might find.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. What a show. He does this every week, I don't know how he does it. And I know Richard would like me to thank all those people who subscribe to the show via PayPal or Patreon every week. Come on, people. You can't expect this show to be here every week if you don't pony up. Even just a little one-off donation would be great, via PayPal. You can do that at skepticzone.tv. And also, while you're surfing the internet, check out my site, maynard.com.au. There's been some interesting stuff there. In fact, I only recently discovered a tape from 1987 where I was working with James Valentine on The Afternoon Show, which is a broadcast quality tape. And let me tell you, James is fantastic. I'm just tagging along for the line. That'll be on my website sometime in the near future or on my Maynard YouTube channel, which you can have a look at. A lot of interesting things there. But and of course there's also free calendars. We've currently got 2 calendars active at maynard.com.au. You can have the Maynard calendar if you think you can put up with the aggravation of that, or the Xanadu calendar. Lots of great shots from that fabulous Olivia Newton-John Electrolyte Orchestra movie, and you can print that out at A4 on your own printer and then bung it on your wall and see what your neighbours think and then go, well, who cares what you think? Coming up on the next show, we look at the book Flim Flam by James Randi and why you should read it if you haven't. Shame on you if you haven't. Hopefully Richard will be back in the studio by then with his cats. But for now, it's Maynard signing off, completely catless, from Maynard's International Studios. Objects may appear a lot smaller than you think. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Shown many times that I still can't do it.
Right, now it's time for the real dice game, not the fake dice game that guy, skeptic guy Saunders, comes up with. And he turns up on every show. He's on Australia Story every week. He was claiming that dachshund that was lost on the Macquarie Island wasn't really a dachshund. He's such a negative skeptic every time. Hello, Lara.
He said it was a weather balloon.
He said that the dachshund on Macquarie Island was in fact a weather balloon. Boy, that made the dachshund fans angry. But we're going to do the real dice game here, so what do you reckon? Just roll it 3 times, see what happens, and whatever happens, we get a drink.
I'm going to go with number 1.
Okay.
Oh, hang on, it's a D10?
I don't know.
It's a D10.
Okay.
It's a D10.
It's a D10.
I'm going to go number 1.
Okay, there you go.
1.
Okay.
What are you going?
I'll go for 3. 3, definitely.
You have to have a guess.
My team was called.
And the dice is gone. That is a quick dice game. Oh, there we go. Do it again.
9.
9. Okay, well, that's an integer of 3, but anyway, go on.
We got that wrong.
I'm going to go for 4 this time.
2.
And one more time, it's a 7. Nah, one more time, I'll go with that 8.
That's right, yeah, exactly.
7.
2. And once again we get bugger all. Good on you.
We have to do a supplementary.
Up the what?
The
supplementary. Right, okay.
2.
7.
Absolutely nothing.
This is the worst move I've ever seen.
The Thought Transfer Act by the Australian Sydney Piddington and his wife Leslie is based on an Hello? Hello? What is it? You know I'm recording. Don't tell me. You want to go out, right? Where are you going? Go on, scoot. You can sit in the sun with your sister. The thought transfer... Oh dear. The thought transfers... You see what you... I can't talk now. Walking across my studio desk...